Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Woodland Road Fun Fair. Apologise for my gravelly voice this morning. I'm having trouble speaking. I've had an illness. I couldn't talk at all yesterday, so hopefully this recording will go okay. I'll jam the hints and tips highlights of this video into the first minute. As I said last time, I'm grouping trees into buildings and then copying and using advanced copy to copy those. I'm using bins to nudge guests away from the edges of the path to stop them from clipping through the trees. And each time I paste a building, I'm nudging some item in the building like a log or a tree to disrupt the regularity of the look of it. I'm painting the paths along the sort of lines that people would normally walk on and adding extra trees to just again disrupt the sideline. At intersections, I'm making sure that each intersection is completely unique. That helps guests work out where they are, and of course using bins on the corners to stop people from cutting the corners. Now, entertainment points are a great way to direct the traffic, to get the guests to go to places they otherwise wouldn't, or to approach a viewing area or maybe a seating area, and then they see the seats and they're tired, so they sit down. I'm going to use that for the lookout point, and I was hopeful that it didn't matter how far away the entertainment point was, the guests would still walk a long distance to get to it, and that will draw them up to the lookout point. Making ramps is quite difficult with the terrain tool if you've already defined the start and end point of the ramp, because the leveling tools don't let you easily run point to point. So it took a bit of messing around to convert the stairway area into a ramp, but I got there eventually. Whereas up on the lookout, I didn't really care what the exact position of the lookout surface was, so I could just make a bump in the ground and then use the level 2, the tool that levels to the surface you're pointing at, to just drive a ramp up to roughly the area that I wanted it, and then the flatten to ride surface tool to level off the top of it. And then go back after that and use the pull tool to pull the terrain up to match the surface I've just created. So this lookout point is based on some lookout areas near where I live, where there was a natural rock formation has caused after erosion for there to be this bump in the landscape, and the local council has driven a ramp up to it, bulldozed a ramp up to give us a place where we can look out over nature basically and enjoy the scenery. Particularly nice when there's a lake to look at. So that distracted me and I shot off to decorate the lake. I've just used the sand tool and occasionally the mud and rock tools to decorate the edges of the lake. I built an island in the middle, put a few trees on it, and then the techniques I have explained in my decorating underwater video I've used to add plants and rocks just under the surface near the edges of the lake, so that when guests are looking down at the lake, it doesn't just look like a flat surface. It's got that sort of disrupted look that you get when you can see that there's objects just below the surface of the water. So then now I've gone back to the lookout point. Silverette in his video mentioned about the way you can manipulate lines of trees to give the impression that there's a lot more trees than there actually are. So I'm practicing that technique here, trying different patterns of tree lines, and then positioning the camera at guest eye level and looking out through the trees to see whether that creates the perception of a densely wooded area. It does seem to work quite well if you keep the smaller trees close to where you're looking from and you have larger trees further away. But of course, once the guests walk up this path to the lookout point and they're looking down on the trees, they can clearly see that it's very sparse and there's a lot of grassland. So I went back and just tree spammed the area around the lookout point until when I positioned the camera up there and then look down at an angle, my sight line the tree canopy looks realistic. So there's a lot of trees close to the lookout point, and further away it's just the tree spamming that you saw me do in a previous video. To clean up this lookout point based on the real world ones that are near where I live, as I said before, I'm using some benches, and I put a guardrail around and then used shrubs and trees to create a safety barrier so that guests can't go and accidentally jump off. And then it just tidying up really the loose ends, and then getting ready for the next video. So to get ready for the next video, I took screenshots of the park in the state that it's in here, and just with paint messed around with it to work out where I thought the park should be located. And then I did a save as of the park and dumped a bunch of rides down to see if they would fit into the area that I'd allowed. And then a couple of goes at that until I figured out how much space I wanted to get it looking the way I wanted. So I'm done for this episode really. I've got a few shots here from the next video. So that's the planning, phase 1 and phase 2. That's a screenshot of where I did a save as and just dumped rides down to see if they would fit. And then in the next video I'm going to be clearing the site, marking it out with flags, leveling it, and then putting in fences and boundary trees, the pathways, and then all the flat rides and the queues and the shops. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.